Hello and welcome to Dish Shelved with Adam White. It's the second week of Comictober, and today I'm going to discuss Black Hole by Charles Burns, which is a real interesting cover there. I have known about this for a long time, but I'd never read it, and I don't know why. It was supposed to be pretty good, but I just thought it sounded a little strange, so I had never gotten around to it, but now I have, and I'm bringing you what I found. Let me tell you what it says about it. And you thought your adolescence was scary. Suburban Seattle, the mid 1970s. We learned from the outset that a strange plague has descended upon the area's teenagers, transmitted by sexual contact. The disease is manifested in any number of ways, from the hideously grotesque to the subtle and concealable, but once you've got it, that's it. There's no turning back. As we inhabit the heads of several key characters, some kids who have it, some who don't, some who are about to get it, what unfolds isn't the expected battle to fight the plague, or bring heightened awareness to it, or even to treat it. What we become witness to instead is a fascinating and eerie portrait of the nature of high school alienation itself. The savagery, the cruelty, the relentless anxiety and ennui, and the longing for escape. And then the murders start. As hypnotically beautiful as it is horrifying, Black Hole transcends its genre by deftly exploring a specific American cultural moment in flux and the kids who are caught in it back when it wasn't exactly cool to be a hippie anymore, but Bowie was still just a little too weird. To say nothing of sprouting horns and molting your skin. So, yeah, it's a book, a comic about uh, you get like body uh, disformations, if that's a word. Uh, I can't think of the other word for it, but you get these bad things happen to your body and you turn strange, uh, and you get it through, it's a sexually transmitted disease. Now, they have in the cover there like a yearbook, and they have all the kids there. And then in the back, they have them all, and some of them are disfigured. And I thought that was a really cool touch to this edition, this hardback edition. It's fairly thick, but I read it in a day. Uh, it's very interesting. It is about teenage angst and trying to fit in and all the teenage kind of tropes that you have in books like that. Let me say also that this I'd probably recommend age wise, probably 17 plus. You'd probably want to be able to see an R-rated movie in order to read this. Just because I don't want you to pick it up and give it to a kid to read, because there is a lot of adult content in it. Uh, and I mean, it's about a sexually transmitted disease essentially, but it's something that turns kids into disfigured freaks essentially. And it happens in strange ways, and there's some really strange looking people in this. And but it really captures the sense of longing to fit in and what happens when you don't, and the sense of alienation amongst your peers. And as it starts out, it's more about the disease and people getting it or not knowing they have it, or and it has a lot to do with that. But then as it gets toward the end, like I said, there are murders in it, it says, and there are, and it's something that the way it happens is the way you see it happen a lot today too. I won't say what it is, but it's very timely, unfortunately, in the way that the murders happen. And it's all about what happens when you just really, physically can't fit in anymore. Uh, and, you wear like a badge saying, here I am, I've done this, and I can't go back because I've gone too far. I can't fit in anymore. And it's about mainly there's a cast of characters, but the main characters are Keith, who kind of has the hots for this girl Chris, and Chris likes another guy named Rob, and it's kind of about Chris and Rob's relationship and how they deal with the disease. And it's about Keith finding himself uh, in the midst of not being able to connect with Chris, even though he'd really like to. And for some reason, almost everyone has mullets. I thought I didn't even know it was the seven. I knew it was before cell phones when this took place because people would have been tracking each other by cell phones, but there was no cell phones here, so I knew it took place in the past at some point. I wasn't sure when until I just read that inside jacket cover in the mid 70s. But I could tell from just the level of technology and the cars and the way people dressed and their hair and stuff. But I thought that was a little soon for mullets, but I guess not. But that's always worth pointing out because mullets are terrible. Uh, and in fact, one guy that gets his life together actually cuts off his mullet, and it's showing him finding a way, trying to fit in, which is kind of both funny and interesting. And so that's another thing that comes into play. But the last part of this book really is both melancholy and um, in a way hopeful despite the terrible things that are going on. Uh, it really deals with Keith and Chris and their what have become separate stories. And it really shows what happens and what kind of mindset you're left in because of the alienation you have, and how do you deal with it and make it work, or does it overcome you with grief and sadness to the point you can't take it anymore. uh, it's is it the best graphic novel I've ever read? No. But I will say that it is one that makes you really think. And I'll show you some of the inside. Let me see if I can find a suitable. Well, but the artwork's really good. I like Charles Burns' artwork, and as you can see, the mullet's there. But um, it has little chapter headings and strange little end papers there in between the um, thing. But it's also, I think, it's called Black Hole because, like a black hole, this inertia of teen alienation pulls you ever closer as you get closer and closer towards this black hole of life. And I think that's why, one of the main reasons why it's called that. That's just my opinion, but it it's like a black hole that pulls you closer and closer and closer as the story goes on into this sense of alienation. And then you find out at the end, like I said, you kind of end with Keith and Chris and their separate stories and how they end up dealing with this alienation. Uh, but really interesting graphic novel. I would recommend it. Like I said, it's not my favorite thing that I've ever read, but it was really interesting and it did make you think. Like I said, there is a lot of adult content in it though, so don't, say, hey kids, here's a graphic novel for you to read this month. But, uh, on the whole, the art was really good, the writing was solid. Uh, it just was a really interesting read. So, uh, if you're into things that are a little odd or strange, and you want to read something that reflects that, then this is a book for you. So, thanks for hanging out with me, and I will see you again next week.